Welcome to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. Our goal is to help you maximize your church's potential. You'll hear from top leaders in children's, student, and family ministry about the principles and practices they use. Now here's your host, Nick Blevins.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 163 of the podcast. We have the man, the myth, the legend, Jeff Henderson, back on the podcast. I love Jeff. As I've gotten to know Jeff a little bit over the years and really have gotten the opportunity to learn from him from afar for well over a decade, just have so much respect for Jeff. He's the classic example of that thing John Maxwell used to say about, his desire was that the more people would know him, the more they would respect him. And that's absolutely true of Jeff. And I'm so thankful to have him back on the podcast talking about his new book, Know What You Are For. Great book that everybody should get. You have probably heard of this concept. Lots of churches are using it everywhere to be for their cities, right? And it started with hashtag for Gwinnett when they were launching Gwinnett Church, but it's popping up everywhere as we talk about. But I love that the book even explores some other areas where we can apply this message of being for ourselves, for the people that we lead, for our communities, all of that. It's just a great interview about his new book. Before we jump into the interview, just want to let you know that this is the last chance to register for the fall round of Ministry Boost courses and to get the bonuses. If you're listening to this when it comes out, registration closes this week. And there are some bonuses in there, including the brand new course, Bridging the Volunteer Gap, all about recruiting volunteers in a hurry to help bridge the gap while you work on a long-term solution to a volunteer shortage. So if that's you, you don't want to miss that. Get another course and then get that free, along with the Volunteer Huddle Archive, building a tech strategy for your ministry, as well as access to the gathering that we will have for the third year in a row, the day before Orange Conference. So if you're going to the Orange Conference and you can come down a day early, get a course, and you'll get access to this Ministry Boost gathering where we get together, with a bunch of leaders, have some great conversations about ministry and get to learn from one another. That's always a lot of fun. So check out ministryboost.org for those courses. Make sure you register this week. But before we jump in the podcast, remember you can get all the links and notes and all that at nickblevins.com/episode 163. So let's go ahead and listen to my interview with Jeff Henderson about his new book, Know What You Are For. Well, it's great to have Jeff Henderson back on the podcast again. Welcome back, Jeff.
It's great to be here, man. When was the last time? 3 years ago? Is that right?
It feels like at least 3 years ago, maybe 2. And we talked to Champion Tribes, which
that's
right.
Right.
If you want to give us an update on that, but yeah, give us an update. A lot of things have changed in like 3 years. What's going on in your world?
Yeah, Nick. Well, I got a college junior. So, the age discrepancy between you and me is pretty significant, especially in our kids' ages. And then I have a high school senior. So Wendy and I are about to be empty nesters. And then we launched a second Gwinnett Church location. So that's been a lot of fun and just to see that opportunity to continue to expand. And then Champion Tribes is going really, really well. We're seeing dads and their 12-year-old sons create a rite of passage journey for their 12-year-olds and do it within the collection of a small group, basically. So that's been fun. Just the stories we're getting to hear is amazing. And then, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the book that's coming out. And, I'm very excited about that.
Yeah. Tell us about the book. I think a lot of times the book is the beginning in some ways of like an idea that gets out there, but this feels like an idea that has been out there in a big way. And now there's a book. So tell us what it's all about.
The For idea, Nick, really is about growth. And I really do believe that organizations, they need to grow. I mean, healthy things grow and unhealthy things die. And how a business or a church or nonprofit defines growth for them, that's great. But every organization needs to grow in some sense. And so what this book is about is really how do you grow? And there's 2 questions that lead to growth, but there's one most powerful form of advertising there is that's what the book kind of leverages. And I've learned this being in the business world, and there's a lot that I think nonprofit leaders and church leaders can learn from the business world, and there's a lot business leaders can learn from the nonprofit and church world. But I think we're all wanting to grow. Nobody starts a church, a nonprofit, a podcast, a business and says, you know what, I hope someday this thing closes down and dies. And so what we need to do is understand the most powerful form of advertising there is, the 2 questions that lead to that. And the cool thing is there's a new way to approach marketing and advertising and messaging that I think is better for the world. And one of the things I say in the book is when it comes to this new world that we're in, it's no longer about being the best company in the world. It's about being the best company for the world. And when you're genuinely for people and for customers and for participants of your nonprofit or for members or attenders, they return the favor and they're for you. It sounds simple, but there's some specific messaging strategies that I think a lot of organizations are missing, that when they tweak that and adjust that, it can help them harness this.
Yeah, and the title, Know What You're For, I like the subtitle, Growth Strategy for Work and Even Better Strategy for Life. And I didn't even put this in the questions, but I have to ask, the cover graphic is pretty cool. It's like a tag on something. What's that all about? What led you to pick that image?
Yeah, so the For Gwinnett strategy really started when we just put a sign. We bought the property of the church, and instead of putting Gwinnett Church coming soon, we just put hashtag For Gwinnett, because we wanted people who were to drive by who might not like the word church or think that's not for them. We wanted to put something that created common ground for them, so we just put hashtag For Gwinnett. But then we gave our small group of volunteers, when we were starting this, T-shirts, and it said, "We're For Gwinnett." So they would go to grocery stores or ballparks or restaurants with these shirts on, and people would come up to them and say, "Hey, what is that sign up? What is that that's being built up there?" And so the book really represents the T-shirts that everybody wore to spread the message. And in that moment, they would say, "Well, it's a church, and the reason it says For Gwinnett is many people are more familiar with what the church is against rather than what the church is for. And we want to be known for what we're for, and we're for Gwinnett, and we're for you." And those kind of conversations really helped grow our church. And so the book cover represents a T-shirt tag, because, when you wear a T-shirt, typically it's telling people what you're for, the team you're for, the college you're for, the company you're for. And I think that's a good thing, but more substantially, what is your organization for, and what are you for personally? When people talk about you, what do you want to be known for? And I think that sounds like an easy question. It's a really challenging and hard question. And when you really think about it and really get to the core of it, it really helps drive your decisions, both organizationally and personally. So that's why we said it's not just a growth strategy for work. What we're talking about is, if you apply this to your personal life, it'll grow your personal life as well.
Yeah. And I was thinking, and I've heard of this concept from you for a while, and I would love to dig into some of the stories of it in just a moment. But I think one of the things that's just brilliant about it is, in some ways, even in the book, you talk about like it's part of the marketing and the messaging, and you have experience with that. Is this? And I just wanted to know, like, when this first came out, and like, you decided, hey, let's put this on that sign instead of the name. Does it feel like one of those little ideas that just came out and nobody knew how big it would become? Or did you feel like even in the moment it was like, this is something, this could be something that could be really, be really helpful? What did it feel like when you actually came up with the idea?
That's a great question, Nick. I would tell you, I felt like it was a really good idea for our community, but I just didn't think about it, that it would start to spread, until about 2 years later. I came in the office one day and I had a coffee mug that a church had sent me in Winnipeg, and it said For Winnipeg, and they wrote a note saying, thanks for what you're doing. This is making a difference in our community. And that's when I thought, whoa, first of all, how do they even know about this? Number one. And then number two, that's when I began to, and so then I started, just shortly after that, I started getting T-shirts in the mail and other coffee mugs and similar notes of people saying, hey, this is really catching on in our community. But then it wasn't until about another 2 years after that a mutual friend of ours, Kerry Newhoff, texted me with a picture. I think he was in South Dakota speaking at a conference, and there was a church doing For the Pine Bluff. And he texted me and he said, okay, I've had it. You've got to get this message out, because churches are doing this, but you're not giving them a place where they can really learn this strategy. It's more than just signs and T-shirts. And so Kerry really pushing me so I give him the credit for the fact that the book actually exists, because I really wasn't even thinking about writing a book. And I think that the cool thing for me, Nick, is this is just organic. There's really not a week that goes by that I don't hear of another community doing this somewhere. And so for example, this week I heard of a group in Buffalo doing it, and they actually do the area code of their community.
Okay.
And I love seeing how people are doing different things. Like another mutual friend of ours, Jeff Brody, and how they have applied this to their church and how it's helped grow their church. So
Yeah.
So it's been really, really fun to see this kind of take off, but it's really happened organically. I'm not that smart to figure this out.
Yeah, I mentioned to you before we started recording that one of our church plants that we helped start, their name's United, and they talk about #United4, and they didn't want to do just one area where we live around Baltimore County, Maryland. It's one little part of it is not big enough, so you're usually reaching multiple zip codes, multiple towns, you know what I mean? So they just put United for, and then they could put whatever, United for people, United for the city, United for kids, and it's worked out really well for them. Yeah. And I'm sure some other churches have done similar things. Tell us some of the stories about, and some of the practical examples about how a church can be for its community. And I've heard so many of these from you over the years and what you've done, and I'm sure some of them now you've heard from all over. But what are some examples of how a church can really be for its community, even beyond just, of course, saying it?
I think a big picture idea of this, to think of it this way, Nick, is to think, and this is what I've shared with our staff over and over again. If we ever decided to close down and say, hey, it's been a great run, but we're going to close down Gwinnett Church, we're going to sell the property, we're going to give all the money away to nonprofits, it's been a great run. My dream would be that school principals and the mayors of our towns in Gwinnett County and parents and even students would come up and say, no, you can't close down, because if you close down, our community will suffer. You're adding so much value to this community. You're for us, that you're just a vital part of who we are. And so thinking like that, one of the things you got to ask is, how are we adding value to the church, to the community? Not just the folks that are coming to our church. That's important. But how are we adding value? Jesus said, you are like the light of the world. And that's a huge statement. So how are we adding value to this community? And one of the ways I think that churches could do potentially a better job at this, Nick, is really connecting with the business community. When you think and ask the question, what does a thriving community need? I think it needs thriving churches, but I also think it needs thriving businesses. And there's other things it needs: thriving schools, thriving economy. But I think they need thriving businesses, because if you don't have a thriving business in your community, there aren't jobs, there aren't resources, and the community suffers. And so I think the church can add value to the business community. So one of the things that we've done on our social media feed is we do For Gwinnett Friday, and we feature a local business. And some of the questions I get from churches is, do you get pushback from businesses that aren't featured? And my response is, well, not really, because this is something we're doing every Friday. So, we're going to do this until the end. And but it's for people that don't necessarily go to our church. It's just for people that are starting a business. We share their story, and we tell our folks, hey, go visit Simply Done Donuts today in Duluth, Georgia. And I love it, because the business owners will ask us, well, why are you doing this? And they're looking for like a catch, like, do you want us to put flyers about your church in our store? And my response is, no, that's not what this is about. What you can do for us is just create a great business, hire as many people and pay them well. And just, if you'll do that, you'll be for Gwinnett, and we're in this together. And so there's some specific social media strategies that I think we can apply as a church. And this is true for businesses as well. I tell business leaders that if a business was a person, many businesses would be considered narcissists, because if you look at their Instagram or Facebook page, it's all about, look how great I am. Look how great we are. Our competitors, they're terrible. We're so awesome. Have you seen our latest product? And if that was a person, we would think, oh, you have an ego problem. And I think people shy away from that. And I think customers are way too sophisticated in today's world to care that you think that you're better than your competitors. That's not surprising information. That's not surprising information to us. But what I would prefer is, how are you making my life better? What are you doing for our community? And let us know your purpose. And that's this whole shift. Let's stop talking about ourselves so much, and let's start talking about the people that we're trying to serve. It sounds like a small shift. It's a gigantic shift. And I see this all the time in major brands on their Instagram page. It's all about them. But I challenge church leaders as well. you should go to your Instagram feed and count how many posts of the last 10 are about you and how many are about the community that you're trying to serve. Sometimes it's hard to reach people because we're too busy talking about ourselves.
True. What are some other examples, at Gwinnett where you've been able to be for the community and for other businesses in some different ways? Because you do social media, and I want to talk more about that. So I want to hold on that one because I think you do that so well. But in terms of the things that aren't just the message, but some of the actions, what are some of the ways that you've been able to be for the community?
Specifically, we have partnered with nonprofits in our community, and we've decided rather than to compete against them, we're going to just fund and fuel and serve them. So there are some specific nonprofits like Good Samaritan, Eagle Ranch Foster Home, North Gwinnett Co-op Ministries, and a few others. And we have one Sunday where all the money, all the cash is given, and we just give it all away 100%. Then we have specific times of the year where we're going and serving them. They give us some specific opportunities. And then our small groups, we ask them to go and consistently serve these nonprofits. And we want to just fuel them and fund them and support them and provide wind in their sails. And so that's one of the things we specifically do on the ground tactically. I would tell churches as well, don't forget, one of the best things that you can do for your community is to create great Sunday morning or Sunday evening or Saturday night programming for your community. So don't forget that. What you do on Sunday and what you do as a church is really, really important. So that's part of this piece. But the other thing is to make sure that tangibly you are providing value in a variety of different ways. And so that's one of the things that we love to do, is just to partner with these nonprofits and let them know, hey, we're for part of how we're going to show our community that we're for them is we're going to be for you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you mentioned, what we do with services can be for the community too. And that's probably a whole separate conversation, but all of us could probably evaluate what we do on Sunday and ask the question, how was each part of this for somebody who's been here for the first time versus for people that had just been here, for a long time? You know what I mean? And
absolutely.
That might reveal some things. Now you've, again, this has been something you've been about for a long time since Gwinnett started. When did Gwinnett start? I feel like I should know that, but I don't remember the exact year.
You're forgiven, Nick. It's fall of 2011.
Okay. I remember coming and visiting the facility once you guys had that built.
Yeah.
And to this day, by the way, I still feel like that is the best designed church building that in the sense of how it communicates your vision and strategy. Like it's just in the walls. It's, you know what I mean? It's in the design. I love it. And connects us too, with our friend Carrie. Same kind of thing. It's like the strategy is in the design. Like people should go check that out. But it's been a while now that this has been an initiative. This has been a culture. It's something that you've built. So you've probably seen, I would imagine, a ripple effect too. Like there's probably some things that, were sown 8 years ago and they're bearing fruit now. Is there anything like that you can tell us about the long-term impact of being for Gwinnett?
That's a great insight on your part. But I think it's important to realize that vision rarely repeated is quickly forgotten. And so what happens as leaders is we have something that we do and then we get bored with it. And we just move on to something new and we create something new because we're just bored with it. Everybody's heard this. And so part of my role here at Gwinnett Church is to say, hey, this is a message that's really, it's based on a foundational biblical verse and maybe the most famous Bible verse of them all, for God so loved the world. That's what this is. So we're not going to drift off message. Our challenge as leaders is to not just start with why, but to stay with why. And we're going to stay with why. And so when we launched the second location, what was so great is that we just took all of this vision, all of this language, all this messaging, and just put it over there. And so it became scalable and it became portable and we could move it around. And so for me, one of the things that I've learned about this is that we have to stay committed and to stay on message. And one of the best examples of this in the business world was Truett Cathy when he asked everybody at Chick-fil-A that when a customer says you're welcome or says thank you, don't say you're welcome, say my pleasure. And in our estimation, as we looked at it, it took really about 8 to 9 years for that phrase to really, really sink in deep. And so every time I go to Chick-fil-A and I hear my pleasure, I'm asking myself, am I staying on message as much as Truett stayed on message? And so the reason this is important is because one of the benefits we've had is that people clearly know the vision and it's portable. And many times our vision statements and our mission statements are so full of words that people can't remember them and recall them. Because the more words, the more competition you have in the memory banks of people. So that for me, one of the biggest learnings is if you can't put it on a t-shirt, people aren't going to be able to say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the fruit from just doing it year after year after year. I remember when I heard you at a conference share that story about the My Pleasure thing and how long it took to stick. And it's funny because even back then, it feels like it's ubiquitous. It feels like it's everywhere now. I see people joke on social media about the one time they can get a Chick-fil-A employee to not say that, or to get them to say thanks so that they can say my pleasure, to the Chick-fil-A employee just for fun, which is great.
We were in another restaurant the other night, and they because it was Sunday, Chick-fil-A was closed, by the way, but it was a hamburger place, and we said thank you, and they said my pleasure. And my wife Wendy's like, they stole that from Chick-fil-A.
They took it. Yeah, that's everywhere. That's just commitment, I guess, right? Let's talk about social media because that's something you do so well. It was a couple years ago, maybe at the next gathering at Orange for Next Gen Pastors, and you were talking about social media and this 4 idea. And I remember we got to ask you questions, and my first question was, give me like the specific behind the scenes of how your staff actually uses social media, because anytime we've talked about it, I just get a sense that you drive a lot of it, which I don't think is always true if you're talking about the senior leader in an organization. And it's just a really high value, it's not like it's one person's job. It's kind of like a high value for your whole church. So give us a little look behind the scenes of how you leverage social media to be for others and how that applies to the whole staff.
To do that, let's talk about the business world for a second. I think the mistake a lot of businesses are making when it comes to social media is that social media is housed within the advertising department. And as a result, it's treated as advertising. So many businesses forget the social in social media. And churches do as well, and nonprofits do as well. So what happens is that social media isn't social media. It's really digital media. It's just a billboard. It's just basically an electronic brochure. And if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But I think the power of social media is not in the media part, it's in the social part, where you can deliver remarkable, personable interactions with people on an individual basis, and it wows them. And it's really built on a principle that I learned from my pastor, Andy Stanley, when he said, do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. Do for one what you wish you could do for everyone. That's not just a great life strategy. It's a brilliant social media strategy. And you know who does this really, really well is Taylor Swift. Taylor Swift can't interact with all of her followers, but she can interact with a few of them. And when she does, it creates a wow personal moment that they talk about. So for me, social media is an opportunity for us to grow small. I want us to grow our church, but I want us to grow in a way that everybody feels is connected and personable. So when I'm walking around on Sunday and I see somebody, I can ask them, hey, how was your vacation in Florida? Because I saw that they were on vacation in Florida on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, some people may think that's a little freaky that their pastor is following them, but for most people, they're like, "Oh, wow, you actually are paying attention to my life." Or I'll see somebody that is going through a difficult time, and we will send them flowers and say, "Hey, I saw that something happened, and we just want to let you know we're praying for you today." Those moments, the more personable, the more remarkable, that people go, "Wow, look at what my church did for me today." And those moments add up over time. A guest services strategy that we talk about that's very similar to this is for us to, each of our guest services volunteers on a Sunday, you can't wow everyone, but let's deliver wow service to one person today. And if you'll deliver wow and deliver something and do something that makes people go, wow, you noticed me. If you'll do that, if I'll do that, if all of us in this room will do that, then we'll leave today knowing that we wowed a lot of people. But that has a mindset shift. And so what a lot of churches and brands and businesses are doing, and I think this is a huge miss, Nick, is they're staying on their platforms and they're not venturing onto the platforms of their customers, attenders, and members and interacting with them there. Those that do, that's the new frontier of social media and marketing. Because what you're saying is we're seeing you and we're for you and we're cheering you on versus, hey, will you come over here and cheer me on? And will you do something for me? And it's more about shifting the focus to the people that you're trying to serve. And when you do that, you create some brand loyalty, if you will, because they know that you are genuinely for them. Now, when I get pushback on stuff like this, and I don't have time to do this, here's the question. It's a little bit confrontational. I'll ask them this question. Do you really care about your customer? Do you really care about your community? Because if you do, you can figure this out. If you don't, you might just be more interested in the organization than you are the customer. And that's not a great place to be.
No, that's a convicting kind of question right there. And I don't know if this is still the case, but I remember, and I know it was true in the early days, where you would take time in staff meeting for like everybody on staff. Hey, let's take a moment. Let's go on social media and engage with people's posts, right? Is that still something that happens? But I thought that was a great thing. And it wasn't, hey, let's take a moment and share let's just share our post or whatever, but let's take a moment and engage with everybody else's stuff on social media kind of to make it social and have the conversation. Do you still do stuff like that?
Did it yesterday. Absolutely.
That's awesome.
And so what we do is we just search the hashtag for Gwinnett because we want to reward the behavior we want repeated. Because when somebody posts something that says that they're for Gwinnett or we're for Gwinnett or whatever, what they're doing is they're reaching a group of people that as a church, we probably couldn't reach. And if I could put my marketing and business hat on, this isn't costing me anything. This is absolutely free. So I want to fuel that kind of behavior to spread the message. Now, to be consistent and to be fair, we're not saying that you shouldn't talk about your church or your business, your organization. We're just saying there needs to be a better balance because right now it's about 100% about the business and 0% about the people that you're serving. And there just needs to be a better balance. I'll also say this. I see this with large brands as well. There is a gigantic discrepancy between the followers of the business and the followers that the business is following. So, for example, there's a large brand that has 600,000 followers on Instagram. They're following 300. When you look at who they're following, they're in essence following their own stores, which means that they're basically following themselves, which is also a definition of narcissism. So I'm not saying you got to follow all 600,000, but that's an indication of where the spotlight is and where the focus of the business is. It's all on the business. And all I'm saying is we got to shift that mindset because the customer is asking, are you for me? Or are you just saying you're for me? And there's a big difference there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is not something that I'm good at, but I feel like what I observe with, and you're describing how it happens with good social media is that it's like it's a person, like they interact and they talk and, they comment on people's stuff, even as churches, like the churches that I see that do social media well. There probably is a person or multiple people behind it, but it feels like a person, like the organization feels like a person as opposed to an organization. And that's a great thing.
That's a great point. That's a great point. In fact, when I was at Buckhead Church, North Point's first multi-site church, we launched the very first, here's a little bit of trivia for you, Nick. We launched the very first social media account for North Point Ministries. It was the Buckhead Church Twitter page.
Wow.
And Twitter account. And the pushback I got on this was people aren't going to follow organizations. They follow people. That's true unless the company acts like a person. And if the company or church acts like a person, people will follow that. And that was my whole point. And that's, I think Buckhead Church has thousands of followers now on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So to your point, if the company or church or business acts like a person, people will follow them.
Yeah, and people should follow your all's Instagram accounts. You do a great job, not just with the church, but I think about even with kids and student ministry and stuff like that. It's just, you do really great things. And I know, we had Rachel, who was at our church, did an internship with you guys that she loved. She's the kids pastor at that United Church that I mentioned.
Yeah.
So of course they have that 4 initiative thing going on, but she got to see how you guys do that from the inside, and has used that at that church, has helped us even some. And so I would just encourage people to go check out your Instagram accounts and see how you do it, because you do it really well. It's really good. Well, let's talk a little bit about, we talked about how this concept is like everywhere and it's spread and it's in different communities and you're hearing stories and all that stuff. How's it feel to know that it has spread that far, that people have adopted this thing? And you've mentioned, hearing about people using it. Are there any other stories you've heard too of like the impact of them using it?
Well, first, it's so funny. I got a text message yesterday that somebody took a picture of a Chick-fil-A billboard. It said "for chicken." I'm like, okay, my life has come full circle now. So,
That's right. They're you're paying it back, right? 'Cause you got the marketing experience and knowledge from Chick-fil-A, and now they're going to take some of that back after you put it into use. That's fine. That does seem just right.
I texted one of my best friends over there and said, "Hey, can I get some free sandwich cards out of that, or can I get anything?"
Royalties. Yeah.
That's right. So we saw the Braves in the playoff run last year. They had these shirts. This whole campaign was for each other, that they were for our community. And that was just really cool. But I think it's just helping give organizations some language around their purpose and why they're there. And, it really goes back to the 2 questions I ask churches or businesses to ask is, what do you want to be known for? That's number 1. That's your vision. And number 2, what are you known for? That's the customer or the attender's reflection of whether you are delivering on your, vision promise. And the power of those 2 questions, Nick, is that when what you want to be known for is what you're known for, when the answers to those 2 questions match, you harness the most powerful form of advertising there is, positive word of mouth advertising. And you fuel it and it becomes viral. And because, as we've been talking about, business is no longer what it tells customers it is. A business is what customers tell other customers it is. This is why personable, remarkable service is so important, and not becoming just a digital media platform, but a social media platform, because you're giving somebody things to talk about. And so a recent practical example of this is the Crossing Church in St. Louis. They just launched For the Lou for St. Louis. And this past week, they did a massive community service initiative, and it was all built on this idea that we're for the community. And it was just to see the pictures of this and what they've done. It's just absolutely astonishing. But the cool thing about this, Nick, is as I'm looking at what the Crossing in St. Louis is doing, I'm thinking, oh, that's a great idea. We need to do that, and that. And so while it may have started from here, it's certainly not stayed here, and we're learning as much now than people are learning from us.
That's awesome. In the book, you talk more than even just being for your community and as a business or as a church, but kind of being for your team and your staff. And I think of a church leader, like being for your staff, being for your volunteers. How can church leaders be for their staff and for their volunteers?
Here's I hate to say it, but here's a painful truth about church world. And this is not a blanket statement. This is, generally speaking, the church isn't a great place to work. And I think that's a shame. And the work cultures of a lot of churches aren't good. And here's the problem with that. It's hard to be for the community when you're not for the people that you work with. And here's why. Let's take a business example. When I walk into a restaurant, I can instantly tell how the staff is being treated because it's flowing right to me. If they're not being treated well, they don't give me eye contact, they don't really welcome me, they don't really care. But if they're being treated really, really well, it flows right to me. I get eye contact, I get a smile, I get great service because they are being served well. Here's why that's important, Nick. The customer is eventually treated like the team is treated. That happens everywhere. It's a principle you can't get away from. And it's hard to be for the community when you've created or work in a very toxic work environment. And there are a lot of organizations where the work environment is toxic. And you can have the best strategies, the best resources, the best building and facilities. But as Peter Trucker said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. So when it comes to doing this, you really have to have a 4 ethos. You have to have really a soul or a spirit or a culture where this is flowing, and not just to the customer or attender or member, but it's flowing to the team as well. So one of the things I do in the book is just talk about designing a 4 culture. There's just basically, it's not 5 steps. It's basically this continuous loop that you need to go on. And if you'll just continually do this, this will fuel a 4 culture where the team knows that you're for them, and then it's going to flow to the customer. So it's not just a customer strategy or a church member strategy. It's really about creating a great work environment, not just for the team, not just for the paid team, but for the volunteers as well. Because again, when your guests are coming in on a Sunday, how those volunteers are being treated, it's flowing right to that guest. No question about it.
That's a good insight. I don't know if many people see that or think that or realize that. You know what I mean? Even in church world, there can be a sense of like, do your job. It's like Bill Belichick. It's like do your job, and almost like you're saying, you don't get cared for, and I don't know. It's not the culture on staff, or you could. I mean, a lot of churches have a different staff culture than church culture, and eventually that probably doesn't keep working.
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable, and from if you want to have a thriving organization, you've got to have a healthy staff. That doesn't mean this is an environment void of conflict. I told our staff yesterday this, just as a reminder. It's not, the goal isn't there's no conflict here. The goal is how we manage the conflict and how we have great conversations when there is conflict. There should be conflict. I want there to be some sort of conflict, because if not, it means that we're not pushing hard enough. But how we handle these conversations, and whether we keep short accounts or not, or whether we, if there's a situation, we don't go directly to the person that can do something about it or talk to somebody, that's called gossip. If all that's happening, trust me, over time, all of this is going to flow right to the people walking in the doors on Sunday and in our community. And at that point, it just becomes rhetoric and a marketing slogan. It's not really real. And honestly, Nick, you know who this starts with? It starts with me. Or it starts with the leader. And if I'm not living this out, because there's really 4 groups of people to be for. There's obviously the customer, the member that we've talked about. There's the team. There's the larger community, groups of people that don't go to your church, but you still want to have a positive impact on them. But then that 4th person is you. We need, one of the best gifts that you can do to show people that you're for them is to have a healthy, rejuvenated, inspired you. And if that's not happening, the other 3 are going to suffer, at least within your scope of leadership.
Yeah, definitely. How about ourselves? And I think a lot of people could probably relate to the idea that we're talking about last in this conversation, and people put themselves last. Happens a lot in church world too. How can we care for ourselves? I mean, that's something else that's you talk about that's important.
That's such a great point. I thought about in the book, I probably should have put this part first instead of last. But I didn't. It's actually the 4th and final one. But the point here, if I could say anything to anyone about being for yourself, is 2 words: remain inspired. Remain inspired. We have a uneasy relationship, I think, with the word inspiration. We think that we can go to a conference for 2 days and that will last the other 363 days of the year. And that's very naive. I'm not saying we shouldn't go to 2-day conferences. I love them. I'm a part of them. That's great. But there has to be a more sustainable approach. And if you're not fighting to remain inspired, then everyone in your life suffers at some point. And inspiration is fickle. And we think that if we fight for inspiration, then it's not real, that it has to be this kind of organic thing. And I just think that's a misconception about remaining inspired. So in the book, I give some practical examples about how to remain inspired so that inspiration is flowing from you to your church, your organization, or your career, and the people in your life. And one of the best gifts I can give my wife, Wendy, and one of the best gifts I can give Jesse and Cole, my kids, is to be an inspired husband and dad. But to do that, I'm gonna have to run at a sustainable pace. And when your life moves at a sustainable pace, it moves to a greater place. And so that whole thing about a sustainable pace is really, really important, because if not, the inspiration, the real life, does a number on inspiration. And then the other three, the customer, team, and community, they're going to suffer because you're not inspired anymore.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, I think we all believe it is hard to prioritize it sometimes, though. You know what I mean? You know, the pressure of everything else, and people don't always see what happens with us, and sometimes we neglect that for sure.
And it's the Stephen Covey principle. You know, you got to put the big priority rocks in the jar first, and then fill everything else around it. And one of the things that's helped me over the years, Nick, is every Sunday I just have this little document called the Weekly Focus, and I prioritize what has to happen this week for this week to be successful in a variety of different areas of my life. And then I look at that document for 2 minutes every day. When I don't do that, I feel like I'm drifting without an anchor during the week. But the weeks that I do that, and I've done this consistently for the last 20 years, it just helps me understand what I'm supposed to do this week when things come crashing in that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, that's good. I use Michael Hyatt's planner where you do the week and then you also do the day. And I have weeks where I don't use it. Like I didn't use it at all this past week. And I know, like, cause I don't feel like I got as many of the big rocks, you know, done. Do you do anything by day, or is it just the week and you keep revisiting that weekly thing? And
I do, you know, and next year I'm going to do Michael's, planner. So I've already got it for next year. But so what I try to do is I look at this document for 2 minutes every morning. And I don't know, this is really weird about me, Nick. I love checking things off.
I think a lot of people do.
And so I just love going,
that's normal, right?
I got that workout in, or I wrote that thank you note, or I did this. It lets me know how I'm doing this week. And the reason this is important is my best days are Monday and Tuesday. I eat great, you know, I exercise, and then Thursday I'm starting to get tired. So when I look at this on Thursday and Friday, I'm like, okay, don't slack off. Let's have a strong weekend. And I don't know if your listeners talk to themselves like I talk to myself, but I do. I think we all do. But anyway, so just looking at that document for 2 minutes every day just helps me go, okay, where am I slacking off a little bit? Where do I need to give myself some grace, but push myself and, you know, finish the week strong?
We didn't even plan to talk about this, but now I'm all curious. And I think people love hearing about how people are productive and go about their work and prioritize their day and all that stuff. With your weekly plan, how many things are on there of like, this has got to happen this week? Because it's not a list of 60 to-do items, I imagine. No. It's the big rocks. And so what's a normal week in terms of how many things are on there?
Well, I got this from Tommy Newberry. Tommy leads the 1% Club. So there are a list of around 15 strategic priorities. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it could be something like, you know, get 4 workouts in this week. It could be finish drafting my will, you know, or just practical things like that. Things that are priorities that have a tendency to get pushed down. And one of the things that people are so kind to me about, Nick, is they say, hey, you're so intentional. But for me, the intentionality comes in this document, because one of these lines is write 15 thank you notes this week to Gwinnett Church volunteers. And so I try to do 3 a day and I just check them off. So there's those strategic priorities. But then there are 7 blanks for strategic relationships. And it's 7 people that this week, by the way, congratulations, you're one of them. I put Nick, do the podcast on Thursday, check, because this is a priority for me. And I just know that when I want to do my very best for you and your audience, but I'll check this off later. I'll actually check this off tomorrow morning when I look at it again. So but then the best question, I think, really is the final question. It says, what to make this upcoming week successful, what are the top 3 things that you've got to get done? And that's a great question to ask. So whether it's this or Michael's planner, the thing is that this allows me to remain inspired for the week ahead and to try to get these things done.
Yeah, that's good. Didn't plan to talk about that, obviously, but I feel like anybody that I get to talk to that is productive and accomplishes big things plans their work somehow. Like, you know what I mean? They don't just do it. They don't just get up and just start doing stuff. There's some intentionality to it. And I see it in my own life, because like last week I didn't use it at all. And I definitely don't feel like I got some big things done. I felt like I kind of like survived, or you know what I mean? Or maybe got some small things done that weren't as important. So
yeah, I wake up on Thursday and go, I wish I would have done the weekly focus this week, because I just feel like I'm swimming in to-dos.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, to wrap up with the book, you got a lot going on because the book's coming out here soon, and you got a tour going on. There's already been a kit that you've created with Orange. So tell us about some different ways that people can interact even beyond the book.
So we're doing the business breakfast tour, and we're actually, a lot of these are hosted at churches, but it's not a prayer breakfast. It's not a church event. It's a business event. It's around the 2 questions that can grow your business, church, or organization. But honestly, part of my hope is that people who might feel a little uncomfortable inviting their boss or employees to church on a Sunday could invite them on a Thursday morning, a Friday morning, or a Monday morning for this business breakfast, and then get some helpful content. They'll get a free book, and then they'll walk away going, this is a pretty cool church. What do y'all do here? So I'm hoping it's kind of a step to lead to some greater steps. So we're going on a tour, and we start in Athens, Georgia, and I'll just be talking about the content of the book and really how to create positive word of mouth advertising where people talk in a positive way about your organization. And so we're doing the first leg of it this fall, and then we'll begin to start putting dates together for first and second quarter of next year. And so I'm really excited about that because to me, I'm excited about being in churches, but I'm excited about talking to business leaders. And so I feel like this is an opportunity for churches and business community to talk to one another. And it's a great opportunity for these local churches to share with their business community that we're for them. So I'm very excited about that. And then if they want to get the book, they can just, it's on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Books A Million, or they can go to jeffhenderson.com, and there's some free resources there for them to kind of help them. And then we're trying to create kind of a monthly tribe, if you will, of people that are learning together. And so that's going to kind of follow the book, but would love for them to jump on the 4 movement, and let's just let the world know that, kind of the overarching statement, Nick, is that in a hypercritical, cynical world, often known for what it's against, let's be a community known for what we're for. I just think that's a better way to approach the world, and it can really help change the world one community at a time. So it's been fun to see this kind of organically happen. And I'm hoping the book fuels all this with some practical strategies and really helps create kind of a community of people that are really journeying together. We're kind of doing this loosely, but I'm hoping that this book creates a community that we're really becoming more of a community, practically speaking, and being able to talk more consistently with one another.
Yeah, I mean, it's already, grown so huge in a movement, if I'll call it that. Where churches and people are doing it all over the place, and I can't imagine how much more it'll grow now that there's a book to it, and there's going to be a place where people can go and learn about it. And who knows? Maybe the book can be like #1 in business or something like that, and people read about it in the airport, and it'll change how they do business, and for churches and leaders how we serve our communities. That's just awesome. Thanks for doing this in your church, modeling this, coming up with the idea. It's a great idea. It's as if you were in marketing at some awesome company before or something like that. But thanks for doing that. And then being so open-handed with it. I mean, I know most people just stole it from you, but you're also open-handed with it if they ask, which is great. And it's really helping churches everywhere. It's just awesome. Thanks for all of that and the book. Looking forward to that coming out, and the tour. Hope you'll come my way. I'll definitely come by. Maybe we could host it or something like that. That'd be awesome.
I would love that, Nick. And you've been an early supporter of this idea, so I really appreciate it. And let's plan first quarter. Let's do this.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on the podcast and talking with us.
Thanks, Nick. Talk to you soon.
Like I said in the beginning, it's always an honor to have Jeff on the podcast. He shares so much wisdom. He's so humble, such a great leader. Love hearing from Jeff. I'm excited for his book and this movement, that we talked about that's already spreading, and what else it's going to do and how much else it can grow. A few action items I think of coming out of that interview are, one, of course, get the book and apply what's in the book to your personal life, to your ministry, to your leadership, to your community, all of that. What are some practical things you can do coming out of that, reading that book, to be more for yourself and your community and your church and all of that. And then that kind of random tangent that we had at the end about the daily, weekly planner. I mean, that is a really great actionable step that you can take this week. Plan your day tomorrow. Plan your week, for the next week. What are the top 3 things for the week? What are the top 3 things each day? You could even Google and find a different planner. Jeff mentioned the one he uses. I use Michael Hyatt's, which you'd have to buy. It's like a book, but you can get sheets online that you could download that would be very similar to this to plan your day. And then the third action item I thought about was repeat the vision this week in some way in your ministry. He had that line, vision rarely repeated is quickly forgotten. Love that. So what's one way that you can repeat the vision in your ministry this week? We'll get all the links and notes and all that at nickblevins.com/episode 163. Be sure to check out ministryboost.org for registering for fall courses to get all the bonuses. You got to sign up this week. So be sure to do that. Take a course to grow your ministry this fall, not in numbers, although that would be great to reach more people, whatever your ministry might be, but really to grow the quality of your ministry, to set aside time to work on one area of your ministry and to take a course to learn how to do that better, but also to get resources that you can tweak and adjust and apply to help you do that faster. So thanks for listening. Hope this interview was helpful. Hope you go out and get Jeff's book, maybe even figure out a way if you can bring Jeff in to do one of those business lunches. That'd be a great idea as well. But as always, I hope it was helpful. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time on the Family Ministry Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Nick Blevins Family Ministry Podcast. We hope this helps you maximize your church's potential. We would love to hear stories of how you apply what you've learned. You can do that by leaving a comment on iTunes or in the show notes at nickblevins.com.